Star Trek: Voyager is better today than it was 30 years ago. Star Trek: Voyager is better today than it was when it premiered 30 years ago. Hype for Star Trek: Voyager was high in the months leading up to its January 16, 1995 premiere. Voyager promised a fresh twist on a familiar formula, with Captain Kathryn Janeway Kate Mulgrew as Star Trek's first female lead, captaining the USS Voyager's combined Starfleet and Maquis crew through the uncharted Delta Quadrant. Star Trek: Voyager also reversed Star Trek: Deep Space Nine's thematic departure from exploration and featured Lieutenant Tuvok Tim Russ as the first series regular Vulcan since Leonard Nimoy's Spock. During its UPN network run, Star Trek: Voyager couldn't escape harsh scrutiny as a new Star Trek show. Kate Mulgrew's Captain Janeway faced criticism just for being a woman in command. Inevitable comparisons between Star Trek: Voyager and Star Trek: The Next Generation deemed Voyager a rehash of its predecessor. Even as Star Trek: Deep Space Nine steadily improved by embracing serialization, Voyager's ratings languished. 7 of 9's Jerry Ryan 4th season edition was lambasted as a cheap way to attract viewers with blatant sex appeal. When viewed through a modern lens, however, Star Trek: Voyager is great Star Trek in its own right. Star Trek: Voyager overcame its problems from 30 years ago. Viewed today, Star Trek: Voyager overcomes its problems from 30 years ago. Star Trek: Voyager's merits as a standalone show are easier to see today when it's clear that Voyager learned from its predecessor's early mistakes. Star Trek: The Next Generation's lackluster Season 1 suffered from trying too hard to recapture Star Trek, the original series, and DS9 struggled with its purpose until shifting focus to the Dominion War. As a premiere episode, Caretaker clearly laid out Star Trek: Voyager's whole conceit, resulting in a show that knew what it was early on and rarely wavered from its central premise as it continued. Star Trek: Voyager's strong central premise is both a strength and a weakness. Star Trek: Voyager delivered comfortable, even-handed Star Trek stories on a fairly consistent basis, but its clear storyline and goal meant early seasons offered little room for growth besides just getting home. Complaints that Star Trek: Voyager hit the reset button too frequently were counted with 7 of 9's arrival and subsequent character arc, which gave Voyager's writers more room to let other characters grow too. Star Trek: Voyager did have character development, but it was slow, especially compared to DS9's more dynamic pace. Voyager was always a better show than it seemed in the 1990s. Star Trek: Voyager was always better than its 1990s perception as a Star Trek: The Next Generation replacement that lacked Star Trek: Deep Space Nine's gravitas. While DS9 explored the difficult reality of maintaining a utopia, Voyager embraced core tenets of John Roddenberry's Star Trek vision from the start. Janeway's decision to include Chakotay's Robert Beltran Maquis crew, and later 7 of 9, instead of relegating them to the brig laid the groundwork for Star Trek: Voyager's tone. By Star Trek: Voyager's end, Captain Janeway's stubborn optimism and radical compassion transformed the USS Voyager's crew into the best versions of themselves. Despite its episodic nature, Star Trek: Voyager does feature recurring themes and a generalized arc. In Voyager's early seasons, characters grieve the lives they plan to live and learn how to cope with their new normal. Star Trek: Voyager's 3rd season heralds the Borg with stories about colonization and rebellion. In Seasons 4 and 5, Voyager questions traditions and directives, while the USS Voyager's growing Delta Quadrant reputation in Seasons 5 and 6 drives themes like storytelling and perception. With home in sight, Star Trek: Voyager doubles down on the themes of family and individual choices that were always present. When Star Trek: Voyager first debuted in 1995, it entered a television landscape that wasn't quite ready to appreciate what it was offering. Sandwiched between the success of The Next Generation and the grittier tone of Deep Space Nine, Voyager often found itself criticized for its uneven tone, reset button storytelling, and technobabble-heavy plots. Yet, 30 years later, Voyager is not only being reappraised, it's thriving in a cultural moment that finally understands the nuances of its mission, its characters, and its vision. In 1995, Voyager was ahead of its time. Today, that time has finally caught up. A captain for the 21st century, at the heart of Voyager is Captain Kathryn Janeway, portrayed with fierce intelligence and unwavering empathy by Kate Mulgrew. In the 90s, some fans and critics were unsure how to handle a female captain at the helm. Was she too motherly? Too stern? Not enough Kirk? Too much Picard? These criticisms say more about the era than they do about Janeway. In 2025, Janeway feels like the ideal leader, decisive yet collaborative, compassionate yet firm, scientific yet intuitive. Her complexity as a character shines today in a world more attuned to the layered realities of leadership, particularly for women. We're living in a time where audiences crave moral ambiguity, emotional intelligence, and representation. Janeway is finally getting her due not as a token female captain, but as one of the great captains of the Star Trek franchise. A mirror for modern challenges. Voyager was always built on a unique premise. Stranded 70,000 light-years from home, a crew must navigate uncharted space without backup, protocol, or a familiar starbase in sight. In the 90s, this episodic take on isolation and survival was often seen as formulaic. But now, post-pandemic, post-globalization, in an era of increasing disconnection and search for belonging, Voyager's themes hit harder than ever. Each week, the crew faced unknown species, ethical dilemmas, and internal conflict, all while clinging to the ideal of a Federation that felt increasingly distant. That's not just science fiction. That's the world we live in. The show's central tension, how to maintain your values when you're completely cut off from the institutions that once gave you identity, is more relevant than ever. Characters that grow with time. While Voyager was often criticized for limited character arcs compared to DS9, a rewatch reveals rich, slow-burning development, especially in characters like Seven of Nine and the Doctor. Seven's exploration of humanity after being freed from the Borg Collective has taken on new meaning in a culture now saturated with conversations about identity, trauma, and what it means to be truly free. Likewise, the Doctor's journey from a piece of medical software to a self-aware being seeking rights and recognition mirrors modern discussions around AI, digital consciousness, and personhood. These arcs were ahead of their time, but now resonate in ways they simply couldn't in the 90s. Even underappreciated characters like B'Elanna Torres, a half-Klingon struggling with identity and anger, now find resonance in more diverse audiences who recognize the nuances of cultural duality and internalized struggle. Legacy beyond the screen. In a media world that's slowly shifting to appreciate long-form storytelling, found family tropes, and character-first drama, Voyager is being rediscovered by a new generation. It's not just a nostalgic watch, it's an emotionally intelligent, morally complex, and deeply optimistic series that models resilience and cooperation. Streaming culture has also been kind to Voyager. No longer beholden to week-to-week cliffhangers or network interference, modern viewers can binge through its 7 seasons and see the through lines that were once obscured. In that format, its themes feel more coherent, its arcs more rewarding, and its message more unified. Looking backward, moving forward, in many ways, Voyager is a bridge between the Trek of the past and the Trek of the future. It maintains the hopeful, exploratory spirit of John Roddenberry's vision while beginning to question the limits of Federation idealism. That tension would go on to define future Trek series like Picard and Discovery, but it started in earnest with Voyager. 30 years later, we finally understand what Voyager was trying to say, and perhaps what it always said, quietly, patiently, waiting for us to catch up. It is not just a relic of 90s television. It is a story about survival, integrity, and humanity in the unknown. And that's something we all need now more than ever. Humanity in the unknown. And that's